Welcome to another episode of The Lord's Delight. We are doing a series on relationship comparisons, comparing any relationship in the world to how some of the relationships are portrayed in the Bible and what can be our key takeaways. In that line, we are today going to be looking at parent and kid relationships. There are numerous relationships in the Bible regarding that. I might talk about some of them. I might just mention, but there is quite a bit of those relationships in the Bible and a lot for us to learn from. The first example I want to start with is that of Eli and his kids. It is in 1 Samuel chapter 2. If you look at the verse in the 20s, starting from 20 and further on, we can see that Eli is being confronted by a man of God, saying, especially in verse 29, that you are honoring your sons more than me. God confronts this priest, Eli, saying, you are putting your kids before me, you're honoring them before me, and not really rebuking them for all the evil that they are doing in God's temple. And that is something that we need to be very aware of. Are the kids coming before God? This is a very, very hard thing, I understand, because kids are they take a special place in anyone's heart. I don't have a kid, but I do have a niece. So I sort of understand, but God is very clear on the fact that you cannot honor your kids more than Him or give them the first priority. Like, your first priority need to be the relationship with God, and that follows into the second example that I'm going to give you, the guy who actually did it. We are going to see in Genesis 22 verses 1 to 19, and this is something we all know and are very familiar with, the passage where Abraham is ready to sacrifice his only son Isaac because of what God had asked him. Can you compare and contrast these two parenting? The world might say, how the heck was he able to going to do that? That's heartless. But the thing is, God stopped it. He didn't allow it. Abraham did not know that. But on the other hand, how did the future of Isaac compared to Ophni and Phinehas turn out? Because Eli prioritized them before God, he didn't chide them. He didn't bring them up rightly. Their lives went down the drain and they died miserably. On the other hand, when Abraham was able to distinguish that priority, that God comes first, he was able to bring up Isaac in a very beautiful way. The thing that impresses me the most is, in the Old Testament, Isaac is that one of those persons with just one wife, even though he had multiple examples around them. That was not that, including his own father. So, because of Abraham's priority that he gave to God, he was able to bring up Isaac in a beautiful way. It had an impact on that kid. And the next example that I want to talk about is, again, a compare contrast of two parents. One is Manoah, that is, and his wife, which is Samson's parents, compared to that of Elizabeth and Zechariah, who are parents of John the Baptist. Sometimes the parents would have it right. You can't blame everything on the parents. These two kids had a very similar calling in their life. They were prophesied, they had a special calling, and God had anointed them, and they were not supposed to be, they were supposed to be Nazarites and not have the wine or their haircut. There's a lot of similarities between the two, but the outcomes, the journeys are so different. I guess you can't, at some point you'll have to let the kids lead their lives, but they could still turn out very different. And that is the thing that I want to point out. John the Baptist had such a role. He was the voice in the wilderness that called out, preparing the way for Christ, the Messiah. His death was brutal, but we don't see ups and downs, or yes, he had while he was in prison asking, are you the Messiah? Are we supposed to wait for someone else? He had doubts in that kind of area, as compared to Samson, who had trouble with his calling, but towards the end he also came back to God. So sometimes parents might not, even though they bring the kids up wonderfully, as kids grow up, they become adults, they have their own choices and free will. All the parents can do is just pray for them sometimes. Then comes in Luke 15, which is one of the parable that we all would have heard a number of times, the parable of the prodigal son, the son who lost everything that he took from his father and came back to the father. This is the heart of God for all of us. We get his blessings, then run away, we exploit them, we lose them, and then what we do is look back and say, oh my God, it would have been awesome if God was with me. Then we come running back, and he accepts us with open arms and he celebrates us. So as parents, yes, you need to have, in terms of be strict with your kids and have a structure in which you bring them up in terms of rules. But when they mess up, how do you deal with them? Whatever your responses are they coming from a place of love? I'm not saying all of us are going to behave like Christ. He is the perfect one. We are not going to. There is going to be emotions on the parent side, but the calling for the parents is much more higher in terms of how they respond to the kids. Jesus calls himself as the Father, and when he has called human beings to be parents, not patients, there is the responsibility they have been called to is much more on a higher level compared to a kid. And as a Christian who's been called to something like that, how does each one respond? In love, and that comes only from having a relationship that is rooted in Christ, because even the rebukes need to come from a place of love, and the way they come out will be very different. We look at how Christ dealt with people who were trying to manipulate him, people who were trying to set him up, people who were trying to trick him into saying something against the government. His response, we have to learn so much from that. If he is doing that to third parties, to his own kids, do you realize how much gentleness will be there when he deals with them? How much love? And that is the key takeaway. Finally, I want to leave you with one example, which is David. His parenting skills were not stellar. He was a great man of God. He had such a heart for God. His parenting skills, he did not rebuke his kids. He did not want to, actually, even after some bad stuff happened, have Absalom try to take over, he still pleaded with his army to be gentle with Absalom, which got them mad. And when Absalom actually passed away, he was killed in the war, David did not gloat over the victory but wept. That is the heart of a father. But then there needs to have been a lot more prior circumstances when David could have addressed the wrong his own kids did, and he did not, especially with respect to Amnon and his own daughter, right? How that stepbrother dealt with a stepdaughter, which was very wrong, and David did not step in as a father and discipline his kids. So if started talking about David and the way his parenting skills were, we can keep going on and on. But what I want to say is there is still hope. Because David was leaning on God, towards the end of his life, God did make him a stellar parent. He even made sure people knew that Solomon was going to be king after him. He set up that succession and the fight amongst his kids. He finally squelched that. That's the thing, when you travel with God, even if you think you're a really bad parent, he works on your heart and he keeps working on you to a point that he redefines your parenting skills. So there is always hope. So I only talked about some of them. There is so many. So when you read through the Bible, or if you have any other examples, feel free to comment or reach out an email. And I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.